All right, so in this video, I'm going to be talking through part F of our Tidewater Landing Stadium project, right? This is the final kind of summative piece where we're creating a position paper that actually weighs in on one of these two issues, or on one of these two stances. Or the question at hand is, will Rhode Island FC generate enough tax revenue over the next 30 seasons to pay back the 54 million in public bonds the government used to fund the construction of the stadium? And so you're going to create a one-page document. It can be one page front and back, but you will either argue yes, it will, or no, it will not, right? You're choosing one side based on your model to make your point. You're free to do this online. If you want to type it, put it on the computer and send it to me to print, that is totally okay. If you want to write it by hand and draw the graphs and write the equations that way, you're more than welcome to do it that way. If you have any other ideas for how you might be able to do this in a way that would be interesting and most suited to you, come talk to me. I'm kind of happy to be flexible. If you guys have a vision you want to go in for this, feel free to be creative. Um, but regardless, your final project is due Wednesday, 4:30 at 8 a.m. Right, 8 a.m. And that is a hard deadline because Friday, May 2nd, right, next Friday, that is my last day at Blackstone. And so I need to have all of these graded and returned to you by Friday, which means I need to start grading on Wednesday because these are going to take me a while to get through. All right, so I need all of the position papers by Wednesday at 8 a.m. So like I said, you're going to take a stance. You're going to say either will or will not. You can do it on paper or you can do it virtually, but regardless, you need to have these things, right? This is a checklist for you to follow to make sure that you are including everything that you need to include. The one thing I want to change about this is I don't need a breakdown of the costs. I want to change this to say summary, right? Table 4 of the costs, that's the one from part B. That's where you just kind of like wrote down a bunch of values. I don't need to see every value on this. You can include it if you think it's kind of worthy of consideration. But at the very least, you need a summary, right? You need to talk about what are the costs, like what are the big costs that you looked at. Um, but what you do need the demand equation. You need a summary of your costs, right? Something that tells me that you considered the costs and what number you came up with as your total. You want to include your revenue equation and your profit equation. You want to include a graph of your function, labeling the zeros and the vertex. And again, you can do a screenshot of Desmos, or you can hand draw this, or any other method, right? But I want to see graph of your function with zeros and vertex labeled. Somewhere on there, you want to highlight the profit maximizing ticket price, and you want to talk about how you estimated the generated tax revenue, right? That's part E, that table 8, right? How do you actually get your estimate of tax revenue? Um, really, really important. You can't just include all of these and expect to get full credit, but you need to explain why your model justifies which stance you took. So if your model says it will generate a lot of tax revenue, you need to explain our model says will generate this much tax revenue that's greater than the $54 million in public bonds, and therefore it was a good investment, right? You need to explain um, why your model justifies the stance that you took. Finally, you can put a limitation section where you want to take at least one of the false assumptions of your model, why it is unrealistic, and how your model could be improved to become more realistic. And remember, your classmates are going to be engaging with this, right? You will be reading each other's and responding to them. So make sure that your paper is clear, well organized, and aesthetically pleasing, right? Someone should be able to look at it and immediately be able to tell what is the stance being taken, where is all of the important information, and kind of be able to access your thinking. So we want this to be kind of neat and organized, and feel free to get creative to make it kind of aesthetically pleasing. On the next page, I attached a model position paper that I created. There's a lot of words here. I don't think you need to write this much to get full credit, but you are certainly welcome to. I think it makes for a good position paper. So I'll be going through this and I'll be highlighting where I meet all of the requirements just to give you a much more concrete picture of a much more concrete picture of how the requirements were met. So first of all, the demand equation. I have the demand equation right here. Right, this information creates the demand equation, shows how many tickets the team can sell for any ticket price. It says summary of costs. I have that here. Considering costs, the model estimates the Tidewater Landing Stadium will cost $117,000 to operate, which includes a couple of specific values, among other things. Now we're looking at, sorry, so let me, demand equation, breakdown of costs, revenue equation. The revenue equation, that's the one right here. We have the profit function. I have that profit function modeled by the equation, right? And the profit function listed there. Graph of your Desmos with zeros and vertex labeled, right? I have that here. If you'll notice, I have the vertex labeled, right? The vertex is right there showing the values of the vertex. I don't have the zeros labeled, but that's because my graph doesn't have any zeros, right? So rather than listing the zeros, rather than showing them on the graph, I just included them here, right? Solving the quadratic form, says the prices will be equal to 13 plus or minus 2.55i, right? I had one where the zeros are imaginary, so I don't have any real zeros. So I didn't put them on the graph, but I did talk about them. And I said, because this value is imaginary, there are no ticket prices where Rhode Island FC will earn positive profit. If you had real solutions, you're going to want to include what those solutions are and what is the range of ticket prices that Rhode Island FC will earn positive profit. All right. You can think about profit maximizing ticket price. I say, here, Rhode Island FC will maximize their profit for $13. Then we're looking at calculation estimated tax revenue. That's what I do here. Okay, that's this whole paragraph. I go step by step, talking about how we took that profit maximizing ticket price and turned it into an estimate of total tax revenue over the next 30 seasons. We're looking for reasoning that explains your claim. Do that down here. Because Rhode Island FC will generate at most $3 million in the next 30 years, it's not a good idea for the government to borrow $54 million to pay for the construction of Tidewater Landing Stadium. Right, we're saying because our model says it will only generate $3 million, it is not worth it to borrow $54 million to pay for it. And then a limitation section. So you will circle back to yellow. For the limitations, that is this paragraph here. So hopefully that's helpful to see how this model meets all of the requirements there. So this model would get a 5 out of 5. But all I'm looking for is that all of this information is contained on there and that you explain why your model justifies whatever stance you took.